Is 1999, and director Paul Thomas Anderson is following up his 1997 classic Boogie Nights with a movie called Magnolia. An ensemble cast takes place in the San Fernando Valley. A lot of the people Anderson liked to work with then, likes to work with now are in the cast. People like John C. Riley, people like the incomparable Philip Seymour Hoffman, may his memory be for a blessing. Tom Cruise, of course, is in the film, and the great Jason Robards is in it as well. It's actually Jason Robards' last film. In real life, Robards was dying of lung cancer, and in the movie, he plays the father of Tom Cruise, bedridden, dying, also of lung cancer. His nurse is Philip Seymour Hoffman. And Robards offers a soliloquy at one point about regrets. He says, "Don't let anyone ever say to you, you shouldn't regret anything. Don't do that. Don't. You regret what you want and use that. Use that regret for anything, any way you want. You can use it, okay?" Mm. You regret what you want. We're just a few days away from Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which begins Friday night and on through the 10 days of awe that conclude with Yom Kippur. One of the main themes of the season of these holidays is called Teshuvah. It means to return, to realign with our original essences and our true selves. And there are 5 steps to Teshuvah, and the first one is regret. Welcome to the Rated Rabbi Sports Card Podcast, where sports cards and pop culture meet the 1984 All-Star Game. I am your host, Rabbi David Spinrad. This is episode 36, Hobby Regrets. One of the first things I collected, definitely in my first year as a collector, is a mostly unknown insert set from a sort of mid to upper tier product called Obsidian, made by Panini. It's got a high upside, but also a high price tag. I think it's got 5 or 7 cards in a box. I've never bought a box. I've only bought the singles. What I love about Obsidian is the cards are black. I love a black bordered card. I think they look fantastic. 1971 Topps Baseball, 1985 football, 1985 Donruss baseball, 1987 Donruss baseball. Black borders are cool because they're tough. When a black border hits, it's like a black car. A black car is the best looking automobile, but the only trouble is they also show everything. So if your black car isn't perfectly spotless and shining, it doesn't look as good, but black is beautiful. I love these Obsidian Supernovas. It's a 20 card insert set from the year 2020. Over the years, from then to now, I've collected 18 of 20 in the insert set. I've got 7 of them as one of ones. I've got another 10 of them out of 5. I've got 1 out of 10. I'm looking to upgrade that one. I'd like to get the whole set, all 20 of this Supernova insert set in one of 1 or one of 5. It's not something a lot of people chase. It's just also not something that shows up very often. I want to show you a couple of them right here in case you don't know what they look like. This is the Joe Burrow out of 5. It's a red. What I love about this card is it looks like it's Art Deco style, almost like a little trophy, the way it's a die cut on top in a circle with the sort of beveled edges. I just think it is a most incredible card. And the way the light shines on it, doesn't pick up the light. I need some direct light. Let's see if I can do it with my phone without getting too much glare. Yeah, there you go. You see how that little swirly planet Earth behind Burrow just kind of lights up and illuminates. It's just these are the most incredible cards. I do believe collect what you like, and I have always loved these. Let me show you the Drew Brees. Here's a Drew Brees. This is Brees in electric blue finite. Electric etch blue finite, one of one. I just think that is the most incredible, gorgeous. It's the way it picks up the light, and it makes me happy. Regrets. I have a hobby regret to share with you. Last November, I had an opportunity to pick up the Tom Brady in exactly the same thing as I showed you the Drew Brees Electric Edge Blue Finite one of one. I've been watching it. I saw it in a BGS slab. I'm trying to get them all in PSA. I saw them in a BGS slab on Card Ladder. Someone had it in their showcase and then took it down. And then I saw it reappear and someone had it listed now as a PSA 8 on eBay. Kind of we were past the insanity, but people were still trying to get insane prices, and he had it listed at $10,000. I'm like, well, you can have your $10,000. That's not a card I'll ever own. And then after it sat for a while, he came all the way down to $5,000, and then $39.99. And I was watching it, and I reached out to him, and asked any flexibility, and actually, then he left eBay and reached out to me on Instagram and went back and forth, perhaps talking about a deal. Here was a chance to get a one of one, and 1,500. I said 1,500 is not close to what that card's worth. And I knew this set. I know this set now, and I said, I'll give you $600 because that's actually what it's worth. But there's a difference between worth and value. It's worth maybe $600, but it probably, because I'm trying to build this set, the value to me was higher. And we actually reached a place where we were going to do a trade. I was going to get that Breeze, which he was, I mean, not that Brady 101, which he was valuing. He kept saying 1,500. I'm like, well, you were just at 10, then you were at 5, then you were at 4. I kept pushing. Finally, he's like, well, let's do it. Let's trade. He knew I had this right now. For you are listening, I'm showing a 56 Mickey Mantle in a PSA 2.5, true 2.5. There are better, there are worse. Don't think it gets a sticker for outstanding eye appeal, but I also don't think it's a bad card. It's got a very nice color, a really nice registration, not beautifully centered, a little banged up on the corners, but still, it's a 56 Mantle, the Triple Crown year. He was going to trade me straight up, and I said, I'm not trading you a 56 Mantle for a 2020 Obsidian Supernova Tom Brady, even if it is the one of one, even if I've been collecting that set for years, and even if I may never see it again. And he said, all right. And another buyer stepped forward. I didn't get it. I wouldn't say I'm haunted by it, but I'd be lying if I didn't say, man, I blew it. Man, I regret it. If I was over it, I certainly wouldn't be talking to you about it right now, right here on this day. I'd have turned the page, but it still kind of haunts me. So what do I do? What do I do with that regret? How do I use that regret? Well, I look at it as tuition. I learned something about collecting, that if you have a moment and there's something you want, that you go for it. There's 5 steps to teshuva, 5 steps to returning to that alignment. And the first one is regret. And I just said the second one, the fancy word is repent, but that's kind of weird valence, right? It's more of like, I promise I'm not going to let a moment like that pass me by again. Taking steps is step 3. I don't know what steps there are to take, other than just keep an eye on all the sales sites, have all my save searches set up. The 4th step, only after those first 3 steps of regret and repent or renounce and taking steps to rectify, only then do you ask for forgiveness. But who is there to forgive in this one? Myself. I gotta forgive myself, man, for letting that one go. Is it ever anything harder than forgiving ourselves in life? It's so much easier to forgive other people, but forgiving ourselves is not something we talk about out loud very much. It's something sort of tend to keep inside. So I'm wondering, I'm not getting personal asking you if you forgive yourself, but what are your hobby regrets? What was an attitude you took, a stance where you dug in on, maybe come at it from a different direction? What's something that got away from you? What do you regret missing out on? Be honest, be honest, be honest. See if it's possible to not do it again. Take those steps. Forgive yourself for the ones that got away. This is a practice. Card collecting is a practice. It's a spiritual practice like any other worthwhile pursuit. Collecting is just a practice. It's like yoga. We're practicing being collectors. We're not perfect collectors. No matter how much money we have, there's no such thing as perfection. There is always only a practice. So forgive ourselves. And the fifth and final step is don't make that mistake again for you, for me, for all of us. It'll be what it'll be. Man, you know when I first remember Jason Robards? Certainly not Magnolia, certainly not Max Dugan Returns, which got a shout out in an earlier episode. We were talking about Charlie Lau. But I really remember Jason Robards in was the 1983 movie The Day After. I'm gonna bring up the movie poster for you to see if you remember. This is what happens the day after a nuclear war between the USSR and the United States of America. If you're a person of a certain age, you saw this movie. You remember the event that was the day after, and you remember what it was like to live during this time period. I can remember, God, how absurd is this? I remember hiding under our desks in case there was a nuclear attack, which even seems older than I am. That seems like something out of the 50s or 60s, but in the 70s and 80s, we were still hide under your desk. They're dropping a nuke. Man, this movie was huge. This movie was anticipated. This TV movie, mind you, this TV movie still to this day remains one of the highest percentage of audience watching of anything that's ever appeared on television. Of the 15 top watched shows in television history, 12 of them are Super Bowls. Number one above all else is the moon landing. July 1969, Apollo 11. That's the number one watch show in all time. You got 12 Super Bowls down the list after it, but you got a few that snuck into that top list. You've got Richard Nixon, his resignation speech, 1974. You've got the MASH finale, and you've got this movie, The Day After. 100 million viewers in 39 million homes. 62% of the TVs that were on that night were on The Day After, shown on ABC, as I mentioned, starring Jason Robards. He was a doctor. It takes place mostly in Lawrence, Kansas, and Kansas City. Kansas is where some of the missile silos are, and you can actually see if you're watching on the YouTube, it shows looking through an open, it's actually a closed window, but the curtains are blowing, and you see ICBMs blasting off through the window the day after. The tagline is, they told us it would be impossible for us to make this movie. They told us it would be impossible for you to watch it. We hope nothing is impossible. This movie was huge. This movie helped shape discourse about the nuclear arms race. Not just discourse, it ends up shaping government policy. Ronald Reagan admits that watching this movie influenced how he saw nuclear proliferation. Can't say that it became officially based on this movie. Did our policies change? But there were treaties after this. This brought the insanity of mutually assured destruction right into our living rooms. It was absolutely mind blowing. Jason Robards, day after. Man. Bottom of the third, one out. Jack Morris on the hill for the Detroit Tigers. Ryan Sandberg stepping in for his second at bat of the game. 0-1 pitch. Sandberg beats one right out in front of the plate. Goes way up. Big Art Carews camped under it between the bag and the plate, about 20 feet inside of the line. Reaches up. It's to his right. Grabs it. Makes a sweep tag trying to get Sandberg. Sandberg can run. We forget that guy had a motor when he was young. He dips his hips out of the way, but stays within the baseline. Sweep tag by Carew, misses, safe at first. Earl Weaver calls it the Baltimore Chop from the booth. Like, what is the? I just take it for granted. Like, what the heck is the Baltimore Chop? Well, I'm gonna tell you. Raider Rabbi Sports Card Podcast does a little research. This is a picture of the Baltimore Baseball Club, the Baltimore Orioles, 1894 to 1896. Maybe 1898, actually. They were the super duper scrappy team. Rough and tumble, would fight you like hard tooth, hard as nails baseball team. Bunch of guys you heard of, right? Guys like Kid Gleason, High Pockets Kelly, Huey Jennings, Wee Willie Keeler, and John McGraw. They were just like rough and tumble. And one of the things they used to do is they used to pay the groundskeeper to pack down the dirt in front of home plate and let it get real dry. So that was like one of the edges they got for. And it was dead ball era. So they practice beating the ball into the earth and get base hits from it. The Baltimore Chop. Greatest player on this team. Got to go with John McGraw. I'm bringing up right now a picture of John McGraw, 1915 Cracker Jack. One of my takeaways as I get further down the road as a collector is I kind of have, if you ever play fantasy sports, particularly fantasy baseball, one of the strategies is a stars and scrubs approach where you pay most of your team's salary, most of your under the salary cap, most of it goes to pay just a couple of stars, just a few stars, and the rest of your guys are just $1 players, stars and scrubs. And I've really been going that way as a collector. And because I got into this a little later in the game, just about 3 years ago, I wasn't there before the prices went big, and is what it is. So instead of just chasing after a bunch of good to great cards, I want to chase after just a small handful of extraordinary, outstanding, breathtaking cards. I want 10% or less of my card collection to actually be worth 90% of its financial value. And I want the rest, I want them just to be for fun. I want less than 10% of my money to be spent on 90% of my cards. So I still get to have fun. I still get to have mail days, but I also get to have a few amazing cards because listen, we are all on a budget. Just want a few beautiful cards. And the reason I'm showing you this picture of it, John McGraw's 1915 Cracker Jack, is because this one makes the list. I think Cracker Jack cards are some of the most beautiful cards ever produced. The red 2 years Cracker Jack made them, 1914, 1915. The 1914 were only available inside of a box of Cracker Jack. So you see them and they have the stains from the caramel and the popcorn. And then 1915, of which I have little doubt this one came from sending away to the company. You could still get them in the boxes, but you could also send away for the whole set to the Cracker Jack folks. This is an incredible card. I do not need one in this condition. This one is like a PSA 6. All I need is just a beautiful, nice resolution, decent centering, a low grade. This one's going to be one of my few beautiful cards. If it's a gorgeous pre-war, one of my favorite sets. It's a giant. Helps tell the history, right? John McGraw, the great New York Giants manager. Here he is actually during his managerial tenure. But the rest are gonna be low end. Here's what I wanna show you from that 90% of my cards, taking only 10% of my budget. It's a 2010 Topps Chrome Gold Refractor of Matt Cain, Gold Refractor out of 50. I love Cainer. He came up as a Giants prospect, really hit his best year, I mean, 2012, he was the best on the staff in 2012. You break it down, it was Lincecum in 2010. It was Kane in 2012. It was Bumgarner in 2014. Just a solid guy, man. They call him the horse, just super durable. And you got to look beyond the numbers with Matt Cain. Sub 500 career, 104 and 118. Good ERA though, right? ERA is 3.66, career WAR 1.22, 21 something WAR for his career. But I want to mention a real interesting stat I discovered. So across Kane's career, he had 112 quality starts without a win. 112 times in Matt Cain's career, he went 6 or more innings and allowed 3 or fewer runs. 112 quality starts without a win. During that time, his record was 0 and 38 with a 2.39 ERA. So he had 112 quality starts without a win. 0 and 38 with a 2.39. Numbers can deceive you. I think there were 6 guys on the Giants who were there for all 3 of the World Series, and Kaner was one of them. Super fun. High end, or for me, high end and low end. The real fun stars and scrubs approach. Finally, I want to respond to a question that came from the shark who he wanted some insight. He wanted to understand my decision-making process. And yes, last week's episode, here's to you, Manchu. He wanted to know who made the cut, who made the Fu Manchu collage, right? Jack Morris, who was the genesis of the exploration, guys like Montana, guys like Joe Namath. I snuck an Al Hrabosky in there. He wondered, why didn't I go with Rod Beck? You're right, Shark. I could have gone with Rod Beck. I have a little bit of regrets. I'd like to tell you, just a hard decision to make, but somehow the shooter slipped my mind, and I don't know why. One of my favorite Giants. Real, real cool guy. He was a Giants closer. That 93 team that won 103 games, finished second behind Atlanta, won 104. He was the closer 97 when the Giants won the division. After 97, ends up in Chicago, plays for the Cubs for a couple of years. In 98, they win the division, and he saves 51 games for Chicago. Beck, 3-time All-Star, 93, 94, 97. After Chicago, he bounces around a little bit. He goes to Boston. He goes to San Diego. Between the two of those, he has an arm injury that he has to recover from. And if you remember Beck, he just was one of those dudes, big, long mullet blowing in the wind. And of course, why I bring it up is Rod Beck had a glorious horseshoe mustache. I got a card for you. 1993 Fleer, watching home. You can see he's grabbing the ball. Looks like he's about to break off a splitter. Beautiful horseshoe mustache. Got the mullet in the back. You can just see it just a little tiny bit. The shooter, Rod Beck, man, one of my favorite Giants. You want to talk regrets? Rod Beck has a really sad story. I didn't quite know how it ended for Beck. I knew he died, but I didn't know of what. It turns out, Beck always liked to sit in the clubhouse, ride the stationary bike real slow, do a crossword with a cigarette and a Coors Light. But at some point, this really beloved, very involved in charities. You actually might not know about that. raised a ton of money for AIDS research. If you think about, locker rooms and clubhouses, 1990s kind of homophobic places, and Beck actually was like really generous, and he used toys for tots and neat guy, but he also had a shadow side, and he ended up with a substance abuse problem, and that legendary RV he used to park outside of spring training. He ends up separating with his wife. They're living in Arizona. He ends up at Lake Pleasant, living out there in his RV, and a couple of former teammates, including Trevor Hoffman, go out and basically talk to him and like, listen, man, you're killing yourself. And at this point, he is really, really addicted to cocaine and to crack cocaine. And there's an intervention, and he gets sober, and he'd relapse, and ends up separated from his wife and estranged from his kids. And unfortunately, he dies from a cocaine induced overdose in, it's just really sad, dies, I believe, 2007. And in doing my research, I found actually a photo from the scene, um, and it is a picture of the death scene of Rod Beck, and it's I'll describe it for the folks who are listening on the podcast. It is a baseball plate, with red stitching on a white plate. It is, and there's a little bit of a cocaine on the plate. There is a rolled up bill, like a dollar bill, and the back side of a baseball card. It looks like it is a 1993 Pinnacle baseball card when Beck was on the Giants. Giants were making a run, and he was just coming into his prime. It's kind of a sad story, and I don't know. Maybe this one is a little bit melancholy today. I usually like to try to keep this on an up note. Talk a little bit about regrets, that breeze, that mantle. Did an odd digression into the Baltimore Chop. Talked about Jason Robards and the day after. Stars and Scrubs, 2010, Matt Cain. Did a little dive into Rod Beck, revisited the horseshoe mustache, and shared kind of a bit of a sad story about his untimely demise, unfortunate drug addiction. So as a rabbi, as a preacher, the most important thing to remember when you've got somebody's audience is you never end on a down note. You can't end low. You got to end high. You've got to end on something that gives people a little bit of hope for the future. Things might be better than they are. You can go down, but you got to raise them up and end on a high note. So with that, I'm going to end with this. I had an incredible mail day a few weeks back. I shared with you that 81 rack pack had the rookie cards of Joe Montana and Dwight Clark. I have an unbelievable mail day and a story to share with you. If you are listening at home, I am holding up the package. It actually arrived on Thursday afternoon of last week. This is Monday, and I've just been sitting on it. I've been sitting on it because I like the anticipation. I know it's in here, and I really am really, really excited to share it with you. So let's end on a hopeful note. Next time we meet, I'm going to show you what's in this package, and we're going to celebrate together. To my Jewish family, I wish you a year of sweetness and health. Shana Tova. To all of you, wherever you are, may everybody always enjoy health and be blessed with long life. So long for now.